Good evening and happy spring. Thank you for joining us in another of the Edmonton Arts Council series of workshops for the working artist. Tonight, we're very happy to be talking with two members of the EAC's public arts team about the logistics, aesthetics, and planning processes behind a public art proposal. Watch for other sessions coming up in the next month or so on social media advertising, on accommodating barriers to participation in the creation of a grant application, on governance through a crisis, like say this one, or on pricing your visual art and craft work. If you have topics that you'd like to see for future events, you can send me a message in the chat function or email us at grants@edmontonarts.ca. We are honored to be working and living in Treaty 6 territory and to be the beneficiaries of generations of stewardship by the First Nations, Dene, and Métis peoples. The Edmonton Arts Council is striving to extend that spirit of fellowship and peace represented by Treaty 6. We will be taking questions throughout the session, so do feel free to use the chat function to capture your ideas. As previously noted, this session will be made available for viewing on the EAC's Truly Rocking YouTube channel. Share with your friends and colleagues. And now over to David Turnbull, Director of Public Art for the Edmonton Arts Council. David.
Thank you, David. So thanks for joining us tonight. So we've got myself and my coworker Chelsea Boyda, who is one of our public art project officers. She's been with us for a number of years, so I'm happy to have her expertise along with for this presentation. So her and I will be tag teaming a little bit. Okay, so let's give it another try. So I'm David Turnbull. I'm the Director of Public Art and Conservation with the Edmonton Arts Council. I've been with the Arts Council now for about 11 years. I came on as a conservator for public art and made the switch over to leading public art and conservation about 3.5, almost 4 years ago now. And so we have made a few changes in the last number of years to some of our processes around submitting for public art calls. And so we're going to go over some of that today. And we're not really going to get into what happens after you've been commissioned. Once you've been awarded the commission. We'll save that for a future date, a future workshop. So tonight is really just about getting ready to submit, what it's like navigating the public art submission process. And myself and Chelsea Boyda will be walking you through that tonight. Please, feel free to interject and ask questions. I'm going to have my camera turned off and just the presentation on the screen, so I might need you to identify yourself before you ask a question, if that's all right with you. And then we'll get going. And if there's anything that's unclear or confusing, I tend to ramble quite a little bit if you haven't already noticed. So please just let us know. Chelsea, would you like to give a quick introduction to yourself as well?
Sure, sounds good. I'm Chelsea Boyda. I'm a public art officer who's been with the Edmonton Public Art for about, this is my 6th year now. So yeah, I'll be pitching in with David and we'll try to keep each other on track for this. And I've navigated the process both as an artist, some unsuccessful applications and then a successful one as well. And then later I joined as an employee, and I've also been on the selection committee. So that's some of the perspective I'm going to bring to tonight's presentation. So go ahead, David.
Great, thanks. Okay, just bear with me while I share my screen and get the PowerPoint up and going here. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see this. And you can probably see my confused look. Okay, so navigating, is that good? Okay, thank God. Okay, navigating the public art submission. So first of all, I think it's always worth revisiting and going back to what is public art. So the way that we define public art, and every municipality defines it slightly differently, but essentially public art is art that's being planned for and executed with the intention of being experienced by the public in a free and accessible way. These are usually done through fairly open and transparent methods, where the public is involved with the selection of the artist or selection of the artwork, or they're involved somewhere along the way. But really, the artwork is meant to exist in the public realm. In most cases, permanent, and most cities qualify permanent as approximately 20 years. That shifts and changes over time as collections are built and as maintenance and conservation is taken care of over the years. But that's kind of the baseline of what we're starting. So Edmonton currently has a Percent for Art policy suite, and that's where the majority of the artworks within the Edmonton Public Collection are commissioned through the Percent for Art policy. So for those that are new to this or unaware, similar to other cities across North America and across the world, I guess, 1% of new civic project construction dollars go towards the acquisition of permanent public artwork. It's almost always tied to the site or to the location of the civic project that's contributing those dollars. And that's why we see a lot of artwork in places that are near the new buildings within the city and new bridges and infrastructure. The policy has been around since 1991. It was revised in 2007 and then 2010. And at that time, we've also added on the gifting policy, deaccession, reciting and conservation policy as well, and the administration for public art. The typical types of sites include police stations, rec centers, schools, libraries, bridges and infrastructure, LRT projects, parks, and other municipal facilities. So here's just a few examples of some of the public art that we've got around the city. Some you might be familiar with, some might be fairly new to you, depending on what area of town you're in and how much of a local Edmonton cultural tourist you are. The one on the left is by Mark Fournier and the Very Many, one of the more signature pieces within the city. And this is a permanent piece from 2014 called The Vaulted Willow at Borden Park. This is exciting for us because this was one of his very first, well, this was definitely the first permanent public artwork that he did in Canada. But it was also within the top three or the first three public art pieces or so that he did permanently around the world. And he's gone on to do some quite enormous and more complicated pieces over time, since this time. Laurent Grasso on the right, this is from Soleil de Nuit, fairly large project for the Commonwealth Rec Center over in my neighborhood from 2013. This is approximately 60 meters of neon tubing, neon lettering. If you go see this, occasionally there are letters burned out because neon has a lifespan. It's also a little delicate. We have replacement pieces, but one of the things that I really love about this one is how it just changes the color of the landscape, like literally changes the color of the landscape when you experience this at different times of the year. So these are a couple examples from my neighborhood, just off Alberta Ave and in the North End. On the left is Christian Moeller, and this is a piece entitled Eclipse. This is a diptych. There's one of these large sculptures with a top that's a swinging pendulum in the north side of the building and one on the south side of the building. This is a kinetic piece that's quite integrated into the structure of the building. And it works through electromagnetic pulses to really keep the pendulum swinging. So this is one that requires quite a bit of maintenance, quite a bit of care. But again, Christian Moeller, he's quite an important public artist on the global scene. We're quite excited to have one of his artworks within the collection. He's also got a couple beautiful pieces outside of the Calgary Public Library downtown, if anyone has seen that, where they look like those drinking birds that tilt up and down. On the right is Destiny Swiderski. So at the time that she made this artwork, she was a local artist. Now she's living on Vancouver Island. And this is at Beaver Hills House, or Beaver Hills House Park, and Michael Fair Park. So this is actually a signage piece, kind of a combination of signage and public artwork, mural plus installation directly onto the wall. She worked with local artist AJ Loudon, who's a graffiti and mural artist. Worked with local fabricators and signage companies as well. And the birds that are along there are each individual shaped cutout and painted aluminum birds with some patterns on them as well. So this really became kind of like the main signage marker for the park. We also we have done a number of temporary projects in the past as well. We used to run a program called Transitory Public Art. This was an initiative through the Public Art Master Plan that existed from 2008 until 2018. And it really was it was interested in the program. We were interested in looking at how temporary projects could be carried out throughout the city. And on a temporary basis, how do opportunities like this really open themselves up for artists who don't do permanent public artwork, create artwork that's not necessarily for public art purposes. Maybe they're more studio-based artists. Maybe they work in mediums that won't always work in the public realm as well. So photography, smaller studio sculpture, printmaking, drawing. We looked at different platforms such as this YEG canvas on the left. We ran a number of campaigns, I believe 3 years in a row, and then last year we ran them in partnership with the LRT and transit to decorate buses inside and outside, as well as wrap an entire LRT train car. The Susan Owen Kagan sculpture on the right that you see at Borden Park was part of a rotation of sculptors and their sculptures that we put through Borden Park from 2014 up until this last year. There are still a few pieces remaining there, but we're really trying to re-envision what Borden Park could be for artworks and how people experience them. The artworks that ended up in Borden Park on the 11 different sculpture pads ended up almost accidentally because the pads were put in by the project. We had a changeover in leadership, and at the last minute, the city came to us and said, okay, we've completed the project. We've got your sculpture pads. When do you want to put the art in? And we said, what are you talking about? So we scrambled with a few ideas, and then we decided, let's turn it into a rotating sculpture park for the next few years. So we've done 2 iterations so far. And now we're just trying to envision what the future of that could be. So planning for public art is it's a little simple, but it's also a little complicated. So the way that we work with the city is that we have we're named in the Percent for Art policy, but then we also have a service agreement with the City of Edmonton. So when the City of Edmonton begins a new civic project, they come to us and we work with the city and their planners and their project team to look at what the potential is for public art integration within the site. If it can't be done within the building itself, what does it look like outside? What are some other opportunities where art could make a big impact to the space, but also to the overall user experience? We're really trying to work really hard with the city to ensure that we have alignment on what some of their goals are. The city oversees the construction of the building or the infrastructure project. The EAC oversees the public art component, working with the artist. But ultimately, the city owns the public art, and you will enter into a 3-way agreement between the city, yourself as the artist, and the Edmonton Arts Council. But for the most part, the EAC oversees that contract on behalf of the city and works directly with the artist and acts as a conduit in between. the artist and the project. The city owns the entire public art collection that the artwork goes into, and then the EAC manages and takes care of that collection and those individual artworks in perpetuity. How's everyone doing so far?
Good. Thanks, David. You've really set the stage for what's going on in our public art collection, some of the ways that we collect projects, some of the scales, and then also how these projects come about. So yeah, after this, I want to share a little bit about where you might find calls advertised, what the process of our typical calls are these days at the Edmonton Arts Council in particular. Other commissioning agencies might be a bit different, but we're really focusing on Edmonton Arts Council approach tonight, so please keep that in mind. Other places can be a bit different. And from there, we'll also go into some about selection committees and what happens, once you apply, what could be the next steps. So to begin with, you might find calls advertised in three main ways from Edmonton Arts Council. So one is the EAC Weekly. So that's a newsletter that goes out where local events are advertised, as well as our grant opportunities, and then reminders about our public art calls that have been released and their deadlines. And the Edmonton Arts Council website has a public art page where you can find the calls posted. You can check back to that website and find things that you might have not caught wind of in other ways if you're not paying attention to the EAC Weekly. And finally, Akimbo is a Canada-wide arts information sharing platform, and we advertise on Akimbo as well. There might be some other ways, but those are three main ones I wanted to focus on for tonight. At the Edmonton Arts Council, the main way that we're sharing calls for artists these days is through an RFQ process, so request for qualifications. This is a two-step process. So the first step is the artist applies with their submission, and the second step is an interview stage. So a whole bunch of people apply, a few are shortlisted for interviews, and those are the two steps. So the application will include a few things that I'll go over soon, but it's a letter, a bio, statement, letter of intent, and curriculum vitae or CV. So anyways, I'll get into that more in a moment. And first, I wanted to say why we're doing it this way. So first of all, artists need time to develop their ideas, and we want to give them that time once they're commissioned. So once they become integrated with the project team, understand the project more fully, have time for a site visit, then we want the artists to pitch their ideas. And that's a bit different than how we did it in the past, but that's how we're doing it these days at the Arts Council here. And then the second reason why we do that is because we want artists to be fairly paid for their work. So that means the artist knows the full budget of their project. They can allot a lot of time to this concept and be very fairly paid for that, rather than kind of rushing and putting in a lot of time and energy into a budget, materials research, creating maquettes, all before they receive the commission. So that's why we're doing that. So I'm ready for the next slide, thanks.
Sure, and I think it's worth noting, so when if any of the engagement sessions, when we were creating connections and exchanges, the 10-year plan to transform Edmonton's arts and heritage. One of the things that we heard was that we wanted to the arts community wanted to see more types of calls going out to artists, requests for proposals, direct calls, direct invitations, things like that. So we've taken all of that to heart. So we just want to put out there right now, for the time being, this is the type of call that we are focusing on. We haven't abandoned any other type. But one of the things that we really like about this, and that we've heard from other artists that have applied in the past, that they like about this process, is that there is, we want the artists to create a certain amount of content for the first part of your application with your letter of intent and your overall approach and how you're going to think about it. But we don't want everyone to be out there hustling to come up with ideas, coming up with budgets prematurely, And we really want the artists to have to do, uh, in some ways, as little amount of work as possible. So if you've got your CV, you've got your CV done. If you have a strong portfolio put together, you've already got that put together. Those are already ready to go in for every type of call, every call that we put out through the RFQ process. So then it really is just about nailing the letter of intent. Right?
Great. Let's move on to a bit about the selection process. So the selection committee is a group of people that helps to decide on which of the artists who apply will be shortlisted for interviews. So that includes, well, the selection committee includes City of Edmonton personnel, architects or engineers for the project, client partners. So when we think of a client, that's, let's say the public art will be going into a library. So people who work at the library would be part of the client partners for the selection committee. Artists and curator representatives will be on the committee, as well as community members. And this is a big cross section of people. They come with a lot of different perspectives. So we'll say it a few times throughout the presentation, but I'll say it first here. Being clear, direct, using plain language, that's important in your application, because this selection committee will be tasked with reviewing many proposals from people who are interested in this call to artists. So it could be 15 people, it could be 70. And so remembering to be clear and concise in your application is important to help keep it readable for the committee who's going through many applications at once. Another thing to remember is the selection committee looks at your application in a few different ways. Initially, your digital submission. So they might look at it on their laptop, or who knows, maybe even their phone or their computer. And then we'll look at it again as a group. Not really these days in COVID, we're doing things a bit more by home office, but typically it would be in a group setting, looking at either a projector or a screen, a large screen, and reviewing the applications again. If you have a chance, go to the Edmonton Public Art website where the calls are listed, and there's also an ongoing call for selection committee participants. And this is a great way to find out more about the process. There's selection committees that happen all year round at the Edmonton Arts Council, and you know, certain types of public art calls will be great for certain people. So we kind of look to the selection committee roster to see who lives where, and if they can be someone who's an artist representative, also a community representative, and just give you a little example of how you can be involved in a selection committee.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, Chelsea. I think that this is one of the things that we really want to really push artists to be involved in. You know, because it really is. It's about shaping your city. It's about shaping the artistic landscape of the city and what it's going to look like in the future. But I think also, if you're an artist who, you know, has applied a number of times and been unsuccessful, you know, we can give you feedback and we can give you some constructive criticism that might assist the next time around. But I think really the best way that we found that artists benefit is actually by putting their name into the hat to be part of the selection committee, so that they fully understand exactly what the process looks like. They understand exactly how the selection reviews the proposals, what kinds of conversations happen. As well, I mean, it's not to make, you know, make it seem trivial or anything, but things like even the quality of your photos. You know, there could be comments about things if they're out of focus, if they're backwards, if they're upside down. I mean, these are minor things, but they actually do have quite a bit of impact. So it gives you that opportunity to really get in there and think about what your proposal could look like to a selection committee member as well.
Also, just to see how great the competition can be. So sometimes when we're not accepted as applicants, it's not about that our application wasn't good enough. It was just our competitors were, you know, also excellent. So moving on from there, we wanted to share a bit about why we moved to the interview process. And then from there, we'll get into a bit more about the submission process. But first, just to describe what the stage 2 of this RFQ, the request for qualification process is. So the group of people apply, that's stage 1. Stage 2 is a few are shortlisted, could be 3 or more, and they're shortlisted for an interview. David, I forget, was it you or me who wanted to talk about this slide?
I can't remember. I have you
Okay,
down, but I can go for it if you
so
like.
one of the big reasons we want to interview artists is because the application itself is so limited. So it's great to have face-to-face contact with people, have them be able to talk about their portfolio more. You know, we ask for photos from people in their applications, but it's great to hear like what's going on in this photo. For instance, even this this photo right here, like sure it's striking, but it's really hard to tell what it is. What this photo is trying to illustrate is a mural inside a mirrored building, and you can't see the mirrors at night, but anyways, it lacks context. So when we get to hear an artist talk about their portfolio images, their letter of approach in person in an interview, that's where we really get a flavor for what this artist is going to bring to the project. So let's see. Also,
Yeah,
the projects can be quite long, David. Did you want to talk about that and just
sure.
why the
Yeah,
project team might want to meet people?
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chelsea. Yeah, it's really it's an opportunity to put faces to names. You know, it's a you know, by submitting, it's a fairly anonymous process. Um, you know, unless you reach out to one of the public art project officers, you don't really get to talk to anyone about it. This is your first opportunity to meet the project team and get a sense of what their goals are, what their values are, what their intentions are with the project, and where they want to see public art integrated as well. Gives you just that much more insight into what makes them tick. The other thing is that this is the beginning of a long-term relationship. Long-term, it could be 1 year, it could be 7 years. We have had projects that have gone on for 7+ years. And so this really is the beginning of that relationship and how you're going to work together, how you're going to understand what each other's experiences are and what your limitations are, and really to understand and be able to talk about, you know, how you're going to work together, and as well as what kind of support you might need. These are not things that would count against you. To be clear, you know, we really pride ourselves on working with artists who are first entering into the public art realm and having successful projects in the end. And we're excited to work with artists that are in that situation and to nurture that. So the fact that there might be a different level of support for one artist versus another doesn't really disqualify you from the running. I think it's just something where it becomes more of an awareness at the very beginning, because in the end, just like the COVID stuff, we're in this together. If you win the commission for a project, you are delivering something for the city on behalf of the city, and it should be a success just like the rest of the big project is, whether it's a park pavilion, whether it's a rec center, whether it's a police station, whatever. But I think also the other really important thing is it's an opportunity for you to have a back and forth and ask questions to the city and to the EAC to make sure that this project is a good fit for you. It's no different than a job interview. You know, an opportunity to really suss out, is this one that you really want to go for or continue down that road? Are you a good fit for this project? Is this project a good fit for you? I think those are very important things that need to be worked out.
Yeah,
And so
David,
the
let's start
interview
that.
is an
Let's move on to the
opportunity.
submission slide because it's exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Chelsea does a wonderful job of moving me along. Thank you, Chelsea.
Okay. So yeah, like, and we're going to get back to the interview thing too, because we're going to talk more about the
Mhm.
submission and then again about the process. And we don't want you to
Yeah.
be, you know, scared of applying because there's interviews involved.
You must also be wearing a watch because I'm not watching the time at all. Okay, step one. So submitting. Big questions to ask yourself before you even submit. Why do I want to apply? I like to see my own personal experience and my own personal wish for seeing applications come in the door is I want to see applications by artists who really want the project. I want to be able to feel how important this project is for them and how and why they're going to be invested in it. Because I think that's ultimately going to lead to the most successful artworks. Um, there are some artists who apply for every single project with the exact same letter of intent, the exact same artist statement, the exact same portfolio, and it doesn't really matter which project they apply for or ultimately get. So I really like to see artists who really are driven to apply for that specific project. There's some kind of a connection, there's some kind of a reason why they want it outside of the paycheck because uh, I think any seasoned public artist will tell you that doing this for the money is not the right reason, and you won't be successful because in the end, a $1 million project stretched over 5 years, your artist fee is not going to be $1 million. You're going to be paying out for fabricators and so many other services. So I think you really need to want the project. The other thing is that the projects do take a lot of time. They have a lot of time commitment. There is a lot of learning that's involved, as well as your own creative time. So, do you have the time to commit to seeing the project through over the course of time? Are you prepared to do the work, or are you prepared to learn to do the work? Again, this is something where you can work with fabricators, you can outsource things, but ultimately you are 100% responsible for that project that you're commissioned to do. So you really need to be on top of things. Are you prepared, or are you prepared to learn how to do that? And then the other question is, do you have the skills and abilities to do it on your own? Or do you need to apply with someone else, or do you need other people for support? So those are some big questions I think to ask yourself before you even start going down the road of submitting.
And some of these questions can lead to answers for the following slide, which talks about the parts of the application. So when we look at this, the application on the there's 6 main parts to this RFQ type application with the interview process that leads to selection. So submission form, that's the simple information about yourself, your address and such, but it must be filled out. And yeah, and just reading the whole call to artists and understanding everything we're looking for. Like we literally have check boxes in the call to artists. So yeah, make sure you apply with everything included. There's also a lot of welcome for you to contact public art officers who are in charge of the call to ask questions, learn more, get clarifications. And I encourage you to do that as soon as you can. Like as soon as you look at a call and you're interested and you want to know more or you need clarification, call soon. That's going to help you to get your application started faster and to meet the deadline. And also to ensure that everyone you are seeking information from has time to get back to you. And yeah, your questions, they might be really, really good because, we're just people making these calls. So sometimes we think we're making clear information and it might not be clear enough for all our readers. So yeah, we're humans here ready to answer questions. The next part of your application is a letter of intent. So what we're looking for in a letter of intent is why do you want to create public art for this project? And we're looking for specifics. Maybe it's about your connection to the place. Maybe the materials that are called for in the call are part of what you're interested in working with or what you have experience in. Maybe you find your past portfolio is really leading you up to this stage. So those kind of specifics. And how would you approach the project? That's a big question that we're looking for answers from in this application. So what's your approach? It might be about having a unique approach to each project, or always having you're following a vision, and this is part of that vision. there's other ways to answer this, and you might even want to call the public art officer to talk about it. And you know, it's kind of like the grants department. Grants is always there to answer questions, and same with public art department.
Yeah. And just to jump in real quick, when we talk about the approach, this is a term that's being used more and more within the public art field. It used to be about intent, but one thing that we're really looking for with your approach is getting a bit of an understanding or insight into how you create your ideas. Is it based in research? Is it based in social practice? Is it based in the history of the site? Will you approach generating your artistic ideas and concepts through community engagement or consultation? So that's what we mean by when we say your approach to creating your artistic ideas is what angles are you going, or do you plan to come at it from? Is this something that you do throughout your practice? Is it always the same, or is it unique to this project how you want to address coming up with your concepts?
Thanks for that further clarification. That was great. Further to your letter of intent, you can include relevant skills. Maybe it's maybe you do bring fabrication skills or design skills or experience in working with people who provide those services to you. So more, you can highlight your administrative skills, or be it project management. Maybe you've managed projects in other fields or within public art or art, and that's a skill you're bringing to managing your own project here. And again, be concise, be clear. We're looking for about a one-page letter of intent usually, which we'll define in the call to artists. An artist statement's always part of your application. You want to hear, you know, what your broader approach is as an artist, but also you can make it specific to your intent in public art or your intent in the project. Yes, and again, be clear and use plain language. An artist bio is always part of an application. So your biography, it's briefly about where you're from. Maybe you've studied art, maybe you haven't, and either way is good. Yeah, sometimes you might want to highlight your relevant experience in your bio as well. And finally, the fifth thing is the CV, the curriculum vitae. Keep it organized, easy to read. You don't have to make it longer than it has to be. If you have a single page, that's great too. And there's plenty of ways to make a CV. I'm not going to go over that at this time, but if you have further questions on that, we can talk about that later. And finally, the portfolio. So that would be an image list. So a list of images, and your images should, like we'll direct you to include information about your images so we can understand the context of it more. And as well, the type of images you need to include. Usually it's a maximum of 10. And you know, if you have better videos of your work than images, that's something you can talk to the public art officer about. Any deviation from what we're asking for is something worth asking the administrator about.
Yeah, and we didn't intentionally leave out bullet points under portfolio. I forgot to put that in and threw that in at the last minute, and forgot to put the bullet points in before I saved. So
luckily, the pro tips on the next page include a lot of images.
Oh, thank God. Okay. Take it away, Chelsea.
Okay. So yeah, we're really clear in the calls to artists about what the requirements are. If there's any reason you can't submit using those requirements, maybe you don't have a computer, you don't have good internet, maybe you can't type. You know, there's all these different barriers that people face. So just call the administrator. We'll see if we can work out some deviation to the requirements that's still fair and creates an equal set of information for the selection committee to compare. When you submit your visual documentation, make sure you're submitting in the correct file types. Do include good quality images that have you know, well-focused images. They illustrate the scale of the work. Occasionally detail shots can be good, but you kind of want to give a good context. And usually it's only 10 images, so you want to be thoughtful on how you place them together. So strong one at the beginning and another strong one at the end. Maybe you have certain works that are really applicable to this public art call, and for sure include good images of those works, um, and comparable size or scope or budget. Those might be also good projects to include. Under the more secrets part of this slide, it's a lot of text on this slide, but again, we want to emphasize to apply for public art calls that will help you create works that are beneficial to you, beneficial to your career, to where you're trying to get to your portfolio. And if it's a deviation from where you want to be going, then maybe it's not the call for you. And I think that is almost it for this, except submit on time as well. That's another important pro tip. So I think we can move on to the next one, David.
Yeah, that's a huge
Got
thing.
other things.
And I think that we can't reiterate enough. If for whatever reason you cannot submit digitally, please contact us and we will work with you. We mean it when we say we want everyone to have a fair chance, and we don't want the technology to get in the way of that. So that is something that we are definitely focused on, ensuring that everyone has equal access to applying. Everyone has a fair chance. We want to remove as many barriers to the application process as possible.
Absolutely. When it comes to references, we don't necessarily ask for that at the point of your initial application. We've moved that more to the interview side of things, but references, they may include, similar scopes of projects. So maybe public art commissioning agents, clients, or consultants. But if you're not there yet, if you don't have those contacts built up in your portfolio, other good options for references that we accept are former instructors, people you've worked with or volunteered with on other projects, and even people that you've worked with on temporary public art. So I hope that keeps it broader for people who are building their experience still.
So we're going to move on to step 2 for interviewing, but I just wanted to do a quick pulse check, see if there's any questions or anything that anyone has at this point. And again, I can't see anyone, so you'll have to just shout out your name and shout out your question.
David, it's David Cheris. I actually have a question that I think comes up in a grants context, and so probably in public art as well. Public art sometimes feels like a chicken and egg thing, wherein if you haven't done it before, you can't do it.
Right.
If you haven't gotten a grant before, you can't get a grant.
Yeah.
How would you say an engaged visual artist should prove their readiness to take the step towards this kind of scale of work?
Well, that's a really good question, David, and it's not a simple question to answer either. I think that the big thing is that as an artist, are you engaged with public art? You understand why you would want to be making public art. Why would you want to be making art for the public realm? Why would you want it to be out there and existing out there rather than from a studio practice where it might be meant for a gallery or for a museum wall? There are big differences in why you create artwork for one realm versus the other. And so I think that, being able to demonstrate why you're ready, why you think you're ready, but also be able to talk about what kind of supports you have in place or supports that you will need, right? We're really wanting to open things up to a lot of 2D artists. And, when we think about two-dimensional artwork in the public realm, the first thing that comes to mind is generally murals. The image that's here on the right, this is from West Edmonton Mall, Lisa Turner and Paul Bernhardt. I mean, they're both studio-based, two-dimensional based artists, right? They're both painters. And so their approach to creating this artwork really was to work with us and work through through some materials with our conservator to figure out what are the best materials and fabrication methods to be able to take their vision and transform it from a studio practice and how they would naturally go about it to into something that becomes more permanent and maybe more robust, maybe on a larger scale, and integrate into the site. So, there's no simple answer, but I think really being able to demonstrate your readiness, that you want to take stuff out into the public realm, that you have a voice that wants to go farther than the gallery walls or the studio walls can. We don't want to. Like I said before, we really pride ourselves on having a collection built up with a number of artists who've had their first public art experiences with us and have gone on to other municipalities. They've gone on to second projects with us. They've become, fairly renowned within the country doing their artwork. And so, we are there to support. We like to support. We want to support them. We really, really see this as capacity building opportunities. We will also, on occasion, direct calls towards artists that are not currently in the collection. So from the very beginning, we know that we're reaching out for artists that may not have public art experience. And we want to set that project forward knowing that we might be working with someone and having to support them in different ways than we would someone who has quite a bit more experience. But when we do
another
that,
way too.
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
I also see artists building up in their scale and considering the type of materials that might be effective in the public realm. And then the third thing is continuing to develop their images in their portfolio. And I think a fourth thing too would be to look to other organizations, be they businesses or nonprofits in Edmonton who are looking for artwork on their walls, and for instance, murals in cafes or whatever, like on the outside of buildings. Other commissioning agencies, they can be, ways you can start to develop your public art portfolio with clients who are not municipally based, like Edmonton Arts Council is.
Yeah, with the private sector, exactly.
Yeah, good. Private sector. There we go. Thanks, too.
Yeah.
Should we move on to interview process now?
Sure. Okay. So step 2. So let's say you've submitted and you've made it to be shortlisted for an interview. So preparing for your interview, it's pretty nerve-wracking. It's just like a job interview. But it's okay to be nervous because everyone is nervous. We are also nervous for the artists, and we really want to make sure that you're as comfortable as possible being able to present your work, present your ideas. So we want to think of it more as a conversation. We will work with you to make sure that you're prepared, though. If you would like to have an opportunity to go over the questions with the project officer and think about how you might want to answer them, that's great. We're more than happy to do that. But if you are selected for an interview, you will get sent the questions ahead of time so that you can prepare. And the way that we like to prepare the interviews is we will come up with some questions. Most of them are pretty consistent from one selection committee to another. There might be 1 or 2 questions that are specific to the project, but again, you'll get that ahead of time. And everyone who is interviewed gets the same questions. They get them sent out at the same time, so they all have the exact same amount of time to prepare, the same resources. And we encourage you to present your portfolio and speak to your portfolio. You're the experts in your artwork. You're the experts in making your artwork, the reason why you made the artwork, how it's made, the drive behind it, and how successful it is or how unsuccessful it is. But you're the expert, so this is your opportunity to really talk about your work, yourself as an artist, and be able to answer some of those interview questions through your portfolio. It doesn't have to be the same portfolio that you submitted earlier on. It can be one that's specific to these questions, where you do, and you really want to use those certain artworks or as examples to illustrate your answer to a question. Okay, and so preparing for your interview, I guess the number one thing is to ask yourself, do you fully understand the project? Do you understand the scope? If you don't, that's fine. Just please reach out for clarification. But hopefully the majority of your questions and understanding has already come from when you first apply. I would really encourage you to do some additional research about the project. Everything that the city does is on the City of Edmonton website, and it shows you the history of the project. So what they've done through community engagement, they have their what we heard reports, they have their project updates, status updates, from concept to design to engineering to community engagement, all of that, as well as history of the site. And so I think the more that you know about the project, the more you know about the surrounding communities, the history, all of that, the more that you're going to be able to engage in a conversation about what some of these broader goals are and why they've approached the architecture the way they have. Think about how you'll approach creating your ideas. Again, this is expanding on the approach from earlier. Will you engage communities? Will you engage the public? Are there specific communities that you'd like to talk to? Because in the end, you're creating artwork that will reside within a community, within a sector, or within an area of the city. So how do you want people to interact with it? So what do you need to know about the people that will be using those spaces? What kind of research are you planning to do? And what kind of ideas do you already have in mind? Preferably not set in stone, but loose ideas. I kind of want to take it off in this direction or this direction. I think it's actually could be detrimental if you come at it with an idea that is too detailed, too fixed already. Because once you're past the interview and you're successful, we actually have time and curatorial support and project team support to help provide you with more information and help you to develop your concepts or help inform your concept development. Think about your past experiences, good and bad, and what you've learned from them. I've had a lot of bad experiences. I'm really good at drawing on my failures or lesser successes, and thinking about what I've learned from them. Because it's all building, it's all learning and taking what you've learned and being able to apply it forward into your next success. The big thing for me is to be honest and transparent. This is just something that I try to adhere to because I would want to know. I would want the project team and the people that are overseeing the contract, I would want them to know if this is my first time. I would want them to know what kind of support I might need along the way. But rest assured, if this is your first time, you will learn. Every project, there's going to be a learning curve, whether you're seasoned or you're brand new to the process. You will be supported along the way, but I think that it's really valuable for everyone to know where they kind of sit and what kind of supports they may need or where their expertise really comes from. Time commitment. Do you have time to commit to the project? Sometimes there are tight timelines for some deliverables in order to get key things into the project tendering process. So if location is calling for what might be like a plaza piece or a three-dimensional piece, we might want to know fairly soon, is this something that might require a structural slab in the concrete or will it require piles? So do you have time to commit and will you be able to meet some of these milestones? So those will all be laid out for you as well. Have you worked with others? What kind of experience have you had and in what capacity? And really make sure that your portfolio speaks to your talents, your skills, and your learnings. And like I cannot say enough, you are the expert in your artwork and how you do your work. You're the one who knows it the best. And it's up to you to really show that to us, demonstrate that to us. Okay. And so you've gone through the interview and you've been successful. So Chelsea, what's next?
Yeah, so I'll talk about, for those who are successful, and then we'll also, talk about those who didn't make it to get the commission. So, um, the contract between successful artist is between the City of Edmonton and the Edmonton Arts Council. So it's a three-way contract. From there, you'll move into the phases of the public art project. So that begins with phase one, that's concept development. That's where you're creating your artwork idea and starting to narrowing down what sort of materials, location, and and uh, and what you'll need to get into detailed design. So that's stage one. So formerly we would call that the proposal. So concept proposal stage. From there, it's design development. So this is where you're really getting into the nitty gritty of your budget, your materials, starting to line up your fabricators and your suppliers. Um, and engineering, that's a big part of your design development stage. From there, you move into fabrication, and then finally installation. So throughout this, the Edmonton Arts Council is your liaison between the City of Edmonton's project team, and we have all sorts of stages in our procedure to help make sure that information is a fulsome package, so nobody's left behind with details that didn't work out. That's the aim, anyways. Things happen, but finally, once the artwork's installed, your artwork would become part of the part of Edmonton, so a part of the Edmonton Arts Edmonton Public Art Collection, and cared for by the Edmonton Arts Council. For those who, well, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, David, but otherwise we'll talk about the rest of you who
Yeah, no,
applied
I
and
just think the idea of, you could be the one that creates the next Talus Dome. You could be loved by many, hated by many. The
yeah,
world's your oyster.
yeah, totally. And yeah, public opinion changes through time, and it can be challenging to have your work in the community. So um, so what's next? For those who weren't selected, um, I'll wait for the slide to catch up with me here. David, can you go on to the next slide?
Oh,
Haha, thanks.
is that it?
I don't see it. Must have stalled. But anyways, not
Oh,
everyone gets selected. Like I said, some people, there could be up to 70 people who apply for a public art call, sometimes even more. So there'll be plenty of people who did not get the commission. And ideally, and we strive to communicate that, the results to everybody. But it's an artist's responsibility to get back to the administrator for additional details, and a conversation can be a good way to get constructive feedback, as opposed to a letter, which can be misinterpreted. So a conversation's ideal. Yeah, there's tons of rejections that happen. We do a lot of, as an artist, we apply for things, and not everything, works even if we wanted it to. So I just wanted to encourage everyone to, look to your applications, successful and not successful, as learning opportunities. It's an iterative process. We can keep building on the work we do to apply to make the next applications stronger and a better representation of ourselves as artists. So yeah,
yeah,
Chuck.
I think
Oh,
I,
go ahead, David.
oh, yeah, I think yeah, one of the things that we've really been trying to do this last couple of years is really make sure that we when we can, and it is difficult when we have a large volume of applicants, but we really try and go around the circle of the selection committee to look at what kind of constructive feedback can be given to the applicants. Like I said, we can't do this for every single call that we do, but when we do, but when we can, we do. So we do track those notes. And yes, it is. We encourage you to get a hold of either myself or the project officer on the project to have a conversation, try and get some more information. And and I think that Also, one of the things that we didn't mention earlier on with the selection committee is when you see the makeup of people, they're coming at your artwork proposal or your artist submission completely cold. They may not know you. They may know you. They may not know you. But they're reading your ideas and your approach for the first time. They're seeing your application package for the first time. And so it really, you know, if you've been rejected, it's worth going back and having someone take a look at it to see what you could do next time. Um, and before you even put in your final submission or your application, to have people proofread it, people that you know, people that you don't know. Does it all make sense? Is it clear what you're trying to get across? Does your portfolio really represent you and the ideas that you're trying to work with? So I think there's a lot of work that can be done ahead of time, but also after the fact. I think there's always a lot to be learned from from being unsuccessful. But just because you're unsuccessful once or twice or 20 times doesn't mean that you'll be unsuccessful all and we really would like to see you. If you can't be successful in Edmonton with our public art calls, we would love to see you successful in other and around the world. So if there's anything that we can do to support your applications for other municipalities and other projects for the private sector, please reach out. We really want to see Edmonton artists do really good here and abroad.
All right, so we've got one more session coming up, an online session, and it's what to expect after you're awarded the commission. And then we want to get into a question and answer period for tonight's session. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll be putting this together in the next few months, what to expect when you're expecting. So what actually happens once you've been awarded the commission? What are you responsible for? What are your deliverables? Where do you and the project team interface? What kind of things do you need to have prepared for engineering, for design, for material specifications, all of those things. So we will get into that in another session because that's quite dense as well. So, with that, if you do have any further questions or for further information, including our upcoming public art calls, we've got some coming out in the next little while, please visit the website, follow the links, like us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. What else? Anyways, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see people. And we can go to any questions.
Yeah, feel free to type questions in the chat or just, unmute yourself and ask them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so, okay. A question in the chat was, are the slides presenting available on the EAC website or in PDF form to have a copy? So like David said at the beginning, this will be on, the recording will be on the YouTube channel. Sure. We can certainly make these available as a PDF form. I don't see why we couldn't. Yeah, for sure.
I just ended up taking a bunch of screenshots anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Well, stay posted. Maybe you can get in touch with us after the session as well. There's a public art call coming out soon. I think it's later this week, the Tell Us World of Science. So maybe that will spur some really poignant questions about a particular task if this call is something you are interested in applying for.
Yeah.
I had a quick question. Someone had mentioned akimbo. I've never heard of that before.
AKIMBO.
Okay, then I got the spelling right. So that's just public arts across Canada?
Yeah, there's all sorts of great information about residencies, upcoming shows, and I've even seen like individual artists being promoted there. So it'd be a way to get your get your name out. I'm not sure, but also public art calls and jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic resource. You will definitely, there will be days you want to unsubscribe. But you can also check off the things that you're really interested in, what areas of the country you're interested in hearing about as well. But yeah, it's a fantastic resource to find what's going on across the country, and especially now in the COVID times and the digital world. There's so many online sessions and workshops and seminars and presentations happening, and so many of them are free right now. So it's a great opportunity to jump on as many of those as possible.
I didn't have any other specific questions. I feel like this is a long-term goal for me, not necessarily in the next year or two, but I did just want to say thank you guys for your time. It's actually been really helpful and informative.
Okay, right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we might actually have it all there. We like to end these sessions unless David or Chelsea, you have anything else that you want to add. We like to end these sessions by actually having everyone come on screen if you're comfortable in doing so. Unmute, we'll blow out the audio quality of the presentation, but it gives us a chance to just thank our presenters properly and actually see each other, because sometimes just being able to see each other is a blessing. So if you're comfortable in doing so, please come on screen. We'll see everybody again. Wave, clap, do whatever feels comfortable for you. We will look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to talking to you all again soon.
All right. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Take care.